Hey, what's happening, everybody? Robert Phoenix here, broadcasting to you live from Fredericksburg, Texas. It's about 10 before the top of the hour, and just getting back in the groove, in the swing of things. We did the Sunday night show, which was a pretty rocking show, I have to say. It was a good show, and I got a lot of really good feedback on that show. If you haven't checked it out, check it out. It's over on, I think it's on the 11th House channel. So, and I'm going to have a follow up to that show on this Sunday night because there's a part 2 to this thing that I'm going to want to share with people. That's even more mind blowing than the connection vis-a-vis Trump's timeline with the actual French Revolution. So we're going to talk about Trump again today. Let's see. There's Judy and Miranda and Isla and FUP77, and then Ian. Hi, Ian. Nice to see you. Wearing my Clean Water Fred shirt. We're in a battle here. Man, these dentists, they are a piece of work. So I want to talk a little bit about that. We're putting out 2 ads today in the local newspaper. One, because they did not print a letter to the editor from a dentist who is not a resident of Fredericksburg. You know her. It is Joan Sufsick. And so in order to get that letter printed, we're going to have to buy an ad, which is what we're doing. And one of the things that I spent part of the day with yesterday is working with one of our team members to go out and find people, professionals, health professionals who will endorse our ad. So we found about a half a dozen, and they happen to be chiropractors, acupuncturists, physical therapists, and one functional medicine person who is an actual doctor, right? It's an actual doctor who practices functional medicine. So we got those signatures, or we got those signatories ready to put on the ad. And apparently one of the dentists went over to this functional medicine person's place and did exactly what we did and asked for their endorsement on their position, which is fluoride is good. And she refused to. And the dentist spoke to her husband. She says, these anti-vaccine people, or these anti-fluoride people, they're crazy. They're not into vaccines either. They don't support vaccinations either. And this is the world we're living in now. And it's really split right down the middle. The alternative health practitioners are generally anti-vax. Oh, there he is. Generally anti-vax, anti-fluoride, anti-5G, anti-GMO. This is pretty much how this is being separated and divided down. I wouldn't even call it like party lines. I'd call it more ideological lines. And this is very interesting to watch and very interesting to be a part of this kind of this war. You know, we're involved in a bit of a war. I was watching a really good video this morning for the show. There's this guy, Black Pigeon, who's really interesting. And I think he's Canadian, and he does really good videos. He doesn't stream live. He has all really high production values, high production quality on his videos. And he did a video on Jordan Peterson. And one of the things that he was trying to do with Jordan Peterson was he was comparing him to Noam Chomsky, and how Noam Chomsky, who can be very anti-American at times, at the very least values free speech. And he has a number of public statements, a number of public interactions where he's definitely in favor of free speech. And Jordan Peterson is not always, to a certain extent he is. And then there's that kind of drop off, that Marianas Trench with Jordan Peterson's ideas around free speech, and free speech, which becomes inflammatory, and he has a hard time with that. But on the other hand, he was also actually supporting Jordan Peterson in a certain kind of way. Like this is what Jordan Peterson brings to the table. He has some good ideas, and he certainly is on the right side of, the establishment enforcing, how we interpret reality by the gender pronoun situation. and he gets that right. So Jordan Peterson does get some things right, and there are other things he does not get right. So it was a really, really good interview. It was a really good piece on Jordan Peterson and free speech. If you're interested in looking at that, but he also talks about how we're living in a time where there's just a higher degree of radicalization that's going on right now, and it's not going to abate anytime soon. And we've looked at the chart for election night on 2020, and it is really just the worst chart. It's terrible, really terrible. And we're going to have Mars in Aries and Mars in Taurus for most of 2019, and we'll have that Mars retrograde in 2019, starting off in Taurus and going backwards to Aries. So it's going to be a very intense year when it comes to martial energy and violence and intensity. So, buckle up. I'm just giving you the heads up right now. Anyway, the one thing that I wanted to just kind of round off with the whole thing with the dentists is that they are really just locked into a certain ideology. And the ideology is one that tends to be this platform where they think that, that science is really going to be the be all and end all. And it's going to have all these panaceas, and it's there for the benefit for the individual and for society, and they're just painfully short-sighted, and they're locked in a way that's almost zombie-like. And they accuse us of being crazy or nuts. These are people that can't say no to conformity. And somehow I just keep trying to wrap my head around this. Like, why are these people so invested? Like, why are the dentists so invested in fluoride? And it just the only thing that I could come up with is that on some level they know they're doing evil by putting mercury in your mouth, by doing root canals that fester and rot inside of your gums, in which case there's a much higher degree of cancer as a result of this festering and rotting root in your mouth, which then basically leaches into the entire, the rest of your body. That maybe even on some level that they can't even comprehend, they feel guilty about fluoride, right, itself. So we have mercury, we have the root canal problem, we've got fluoride. So maybe somewhere inside of themselves, they're making this kind of philosophical trade-off, which is, oh, well, we're gonna put fluoride in the water, and it's gonna make everybody feel better, and so you're gonna make all these young poor people feel like that. Give them the added dental protection that they're normally not going to get because they're drooling savages and fucking idiots. I mean, in a lot of ways, it's really insulting. And what's interesting is now we're seeing these groups. There's a group called LULAC, and they are a group that's Latino. It's a Latino organization, and they are pushing back on the fluoride thing. They're saying, you're. It's almost like this kind of brain dead or brain dead, meaning soft colonialism. That's what it is. It's like, we're going to colonize your teeth, and we're going to colonize the rest of your body, and we're going to colonize your health, and it's in your best interest. It is so insulting. Like, if I was a Latino American or Black American, and it's like, you don't speak for me. I get to make my own choices around what I put in my mouth and what I put in my body. You don't speak for me. So if you don't speak for me, then who are you speaking for? And here's where it gets into their, ultimately, where I think it's all tied together, right? Like, I think that they have some kind of internal thing going on where it's like, I'm going to do bad in this area, but I'm going to theoretically do good in this area. We see this all the time. Do-gooders are like that. Like, the Masons are really into good public works. Well, why are they into good public works? Because on the other side, they're probably doing shit that make your toes curl. And so that goes on, right? There's this kind of quid pro quo. It's a very popular phrase these days, but that's the ultimate in quid pro quo, covering up or trying to ameliorate or heal your evil side, because the other side of you is going out and doing things that are not so great. It happens all the time. Even Trump does it, and we're going to get into a little of that with Trump. You see, I I do my best, my absolute best, to stay as clear and focused on the Trump side of things as I possibly can. Like when I see things that are interesting, I'll talk about them. And when I see things that make me scratch my head, I'll talk about them. And that happens quite a bit with Trump, and I'm going to get into some of that this morning. So let's go back to the dentist. Now, here's where there's this kind of master plan in place. So if you are, and by the way, the Democratic Party is almost always aligned with fluoridation. And it's because of this idea that the underserved, underprivileged, and the underclass get to have like some modicum of free shit in their mouth, which is coming through the city's municipal water supply. It's another feel-good story. These poor people, their teeth are so terrible. Let's continue to enable the city and allow the city to continue to put this industrial fertilizer byproduct in their water supply because they need protection. But it's part of an overarching plan, right? It's part of their, hey, let's get them to this country, let's get them in the system, and let's support them. And fluoride is their version of support. So it's tied into this, again, this kind of larger, this rubric of, how quote unquote illegals are treated and cared for and the services that are provided for them. I guarantee you that they're thinking that this is a service that they need to provide for the underclass. And if I was the underclass, theoretically, whoever they are, I would say, get the fuck out of my mouth. I get to make my own choices. And there's even a group of black pastors in America that are saying the same thing. And they're saying, by you doing this and putting this in the water, and I want to be clear, just because you take the fluoride out of the water doesn't make the water great. There's a lot of other things going on with the water that most cities and municipalities, they use a lot of chlorine to make the water drinkable, to disinfect the water. And there's better ways to do that. You can use UV light. You can use a saline solution, add a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of saline solution, which is basically salt. And it does the same thing as chlorine does. But it's a start, right? Taking the fluoride out is a start. And then you got to get to the next level, which is making that water better and better and better. So we have good drinkable water, everybody across the board. But what this pastor said is that the underclass, right, the underclass or the underprivileged, that they don't have the money to go out and buy water filters. He's right. Water, really, really good water filter, if you want to do it right and get yourself a Berkey or reverse osmosis under the sink system, at the very least, you're spending $500 for a good Berkey with a Schauberger coil or whatever you want to put at the end. Like that's what you're going to spend. And people they can't afford that. Yeah. I know people that get bottled water delivered to their house from springs that are untouched by fluoride, and that's what they drink. And that's great. And that's what I drink too. I go to get the best water I can possibly get, and I bottle it up, the reverse osmosis and the UV light. I go to the health food store and I fill up. So I do that. But a lot of people can't afford that bottled water. So they're subjected to drinking the city water, which 9 times out of 10 is going to have fluoride. And those people, again, if they had the money and they were informed, guess what? They would say, wow, I don't want that shit in my water, but I can't afford to do anything else. So it's what's happening is that the city now, or the county, or whoever is providing the water, is creating it's creating a block, so that it's like they're raising the bar, not in a good way. It's an impediment for people who don't want fluoride in the water to create or find a different type of water that is fluoride free. So they're doing, in some ways, they're kind of doing the absolute reverse of what they think they're doing. So it's tied into this ideology that there are so many poor people in town, and oh my God, we've got to take care of them. And it's all based on this kind of, liberal white guilt bullshit. And we're gonna support the people that I've done the numbers on this town. There aren't a lot of poor people in this town. You're talking really, if you want to do the numbers, you want to parse the numbers, you're talking about maybe 250 kids at the most. And so we're going to fluoridate the entire water supply roughly for those 250 kids. Now, there are, of course, adults who think it's great, and they'll say, wow, I've been here for 45 years and I'm just fine. Oh, really? Let's sit down and let's talk about your medical condition. Let's see how fine you really are. I'm just fine. Yeah, I take this for this and this for this and that for that. But other than that, I get up in the morning. I usually have a good stool. I usually have a good BM, but I'm just fine. No, you're not. You're not just fine. You probably have things going on. Every now and then you'll find somebody who will be just fine. I'm not saying that that's the case. Some people are blessed with health. Some people are just blessed with health, and they're able to transmute whatever they put into their system. And but in other cases, people aren't. And fluoride, and there's no way to really gauge that, right? There's no way to gauge that because different people have different sensitivities to what's being added to their water. So just because this person might be just fine, their neighbor might be drinking the same water and having all kinds of shit go wrong with them. And say, okay, well, let's talk to them. And let's talk to the people across the street. So now we got 2 out of 3 people that are having some kind of a health issue. You think there might be a common denominator here? Right? There's always a variable in groups. And in this case, a variable, or it would be somebody's immune system. And some people are just blessed with really good immune systems. And that's the way it is. I'll tell you, he's not blessed with a good immune system. Al-Baghdadi, well, I guess he was, because this is the 4th time he's died. Now, this is where I get into the bad Trump thing. You know, there's good Trump and then there's bad Trump, which is par for the course. And that's par for the course with what's going on with how he is able to demonstrate and manifest his sun in Gemini Uranus in Gemini conjunction on steroids, right? There's the good Trump and the bad Trump. The good, he'll do something good and he'll do something when you scratch your head. Like, why did they have to go after this al-Baghdadi guy? This is like the 4th time he's died, apparently. So let me go to an article here. I'll do a little screen shareage. Give me a second. What's going on with chat? I think the Dental Society dentists are afraid of lawsuits. That's a good point, Joan. Call Tom VMD. He's in Colorado Springs. He'll help. Those Brita things with the cheap picture at Walmart don't last for the built to be price gauged. Brita doesn't get fluoride out. That's correct. Hello, Lynn. We already lost our fight in Albuquerque. We were supposed to get a referendum vote on the matter, never did. Local politicians are corrupt and controlled. This is true. This is one thing that Uncle Glenn is right on the money about, is that even here, you know, it's clannish. It's totally clannish. You know, yesterday, Jeanette, who I've talked about, and I'm going to try and get her on the show before, she'll be on tomorrow because I'm going to try to do this thing live from this radio station down in Kerrville. Anyway, Jeanette was harassed down at City Hall yesterday. You know, well, it's not really City Hall. It's the City Works, and that's where they have early voting. So she's been out there and she's been electioneering, which by law we're allowed to do. The city went out and went to talk to her and said that she couldn't be there because they were getting complaints that she was harassing people. I've been out with Jeanette numerous times and talked with people. She's the least harassing person you could ever meet. She's a bit timid. She's funny. She's clearly she has a focus and she wants to make a point. She's not harassing anybody. And that was followed by a visit from the police. Can you believe that? The police went to go talk to her about electioneering, which is her right to do. And they eventually, there's nothing they can do, but the city called the cops. Go and talk to her. Bullshit. It's total bullshit. All right, let me get back into sort of the topic of the moment, which is this thing with Trump and Baghdadi. And this is, this gets into me. This gets into the whole like fake bin Laden thing, which I abhorred. But this is where it gets into it, and I cringe. It's like, really? You had to do this? Did you really have to do this? Who told you to do this? Disposal complete. ISIS chief al-Baghdadi buried at sea like bin Laden. But photo and video proof remains classified, of course. And so, they bury this guy at sea, which is what they did with bin Laden, supposedly, the so-called bin Laden. We know that wasn't bin Laden. There are two theories about bin Laden. One, that bin Laden was dead for quite a while, which I tend to believe because he had an issue with his kidneys. The other theory about bin Laden is it's actually Obama. And if you there's like images out there where if you put bin Laden's beard on Obama's face, he tends to look like him. And that would fit because Obama worked for the CIA prior to becoming president of the United States. Obama's a creation of the CIA. And there's also images or pictures of him and it's where he's playing Benjamin Krem's Antichrist, right? Anyway, so I don't think that the guy who was bin Laden when he was shot and killed, it was not bin Laden. And then you had all the SEAL Team 6 guys dropping like flies who were part of that operation. Same thing goes here. Same thing's going on here. It kind of makes me cringe. Really, it's like, really, you're pulling an Obama here. But I've come to understand this and appreciate this with Trump. And now they may say, on the Q side of things, on the Q tip, they may say, well, something else was going on there. There's always something else going on. I'm sorry, I'm a little cynical on the Q side. There's always something else going on. Well, we had to get rid of the kids. They were harboring kids or something, whatever. So they went after this guy. They said it was al-Baghdadi, but don't worry about it. We got the real culprit. So the U.S. got rid of Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi's body mere hours after a swift DNA test confirmed the terrorist's identity. Pentagon officials said, adding that all evidence of the raid and his burial at sea remain classified, of course. Following the U.S. Special Forces operation in northwestern Syria, in which Washington claims al-Baghdadi was eliminated, the mutilated body was immediately taken to a secure facility to confirm his identity with forensic DNA testing. Army General Mike Miley, the chairman of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, told the news briefing, disposal of his remains has been done and is complete and was handled properly. Like, really, who gives a shit? I mean, I guess you don't want to offend the Muslim community by not disposing of his body properly. God forbid. Just like the Al-Qaeda leader, Osama bin Laden, the Islamic State, IS from the ISIL terrorist group chief was reportedly given a proper burial at sea, according with Islamic tradition, with all Muslim religious rights afforded to him. I'm sorry. If you're a practicing Muslim and you're listening, can you please chime in and let us know if that's really the case? Is that what happens with all Muslims? They get buried at sea? Question mark. I don't know. While the raid and subsequent processes of identification and body disposal were documented in numerous photos and videos, they are yet to go through a declassification process, according to the U.S. General. All we have are Trump's words. UN isn't confirming elimination of ICE. It's not just ISIS now, it's IS Chief al-Baghdadi. Even though Donald Trump said earlier he was considering making certain parts of the video from the raid available to the public. Presumably al-Baghdadi was whimpering, screaming, and crying. Yeah, that reminds me of Hillary Clinton. We came, we saw, he died, was whimpering, screaming, and crying as he met his end. It remains unclear how much footage of would see the light, if any. It's just weird, man. And there are people who are, that gets the anti-Muslim, heartbeat going. Oh, he's whimpering, screaming, and crying. Bastard. Good job, DJR. I don't know. This stuff doesn't move my needle at all. It does not move my needle at all. Where is the proof? We've been here before. Al-Baghdadi's been reported dead or fatally injured many times. That's right. That's what I've been trying to say. And it just to me, I mean, maybe he's forced to do it, or maybe there's some kind of weird Q-tip thing going on here, but it just takes away from the credibility level, the people who are really trying to, have their high beams on and wrap their arms up. But again, I think that it's part of the program. You get good Trump and bad Trump, good Trump and bad Trump, good Trump and bad Trump. And we're going to be talking about this probably until next November, where we literally lurch into the election. It's going to be a heavy year. 2020 is going to be a heavy year. I've talked about it at Solutions. If you haven't seen the video, go over to, I guess on this channel, right? Well, Jasper's feeling feisty today. He's feisty. Jasper's in a fight. See, I started to talk about the election and how intense it's going to be. Look what Jasper does. He wants to fight me. You can't take me on. Look at him. Look at him. Because he doesn't have any teeth. He has very few teeth. You can't take me on. My father, who was a Leo, he used to say, he would look at me. Now, he wouldn't say it all the time, but I get this like every couple of years. He would look at me and he would say, if you strike the king, you've got to kill the king. I'm like, I think he told me that the first time about 13 years old. He was letting me know, like, you hit me, you better kill me. You better kill me. He used to give me these like bon mots of life too around. My father used to fight. Like that was his thing. He used to fight when he was young, and he would have these. It was like right out of James Dean land, right out of that Rebel Without a Cause world. And my father would go up on these roads in around San Bruno and Millbrae, where they have this really big Crystal Springs reservoir, and they'd go up on these roads, nobody be around, and they'd have two cars, and they'd throw the lights on, and then they would square off in between, the lights, and they would fight. My father was like kind of like a Fight Club guy, he was a Fight Club guy in his pre-Fight Club. That was his thing, Anyway, one time because he would school me like on fighting because but he wasn't well. He every now and then he'd give me little tips, right? This was one of his tips. He says, "Listen, if you ever get into a fight with a Mexican, you've got to break their arm or something." Oh, I'm like, real? I'm like, wow, where's this coming from? He says, because if you don't break their arm, they will come back and get you. Because they are relentless. I'm like, duly noted. Don't fight Mexicans. That's the message I'm getting from the whole thing. I don't know. It's like I got into fights when I was a kid, but it was not like, it was not like my father. It was usually out of like self-defense, more than likely. It wasn't like I was trying to establish some level of respect. But if you fight them, you've got to break an arm or break a leg, break one of their bones. What do you want? Oh, he's feisty today. All right, go over there. Let's see what's going on in Chatlandia. What's happening in Chatlandia? We need a Chatlandia song. Chatlandia, where the cool kids hang out every day. Okay, maritime law rules. What do we have? I saw my father in a bunch of fights growing up too. He was a good pool hustler, teen in Brooklyn. So your dad was a Leo, your mom was a Pisces. That's an interesting pairing. Yeah, we're talking about the inconjunct, right? And they were not quite inconjunct, but I'll tell you what they both had. They both had Libra moons, and my father was a Virgo moon. So my father was a Libra rising. And my mother has a bunch of planets in Aries, including Saturn. So all her Aries planets were in his seventh house. Today's National Cat Day. I can make a techno version. That'd be great. I can just hear Megan is in the chat room today. That's awesome. Nice to see you, Megan. Nice to see you. Miranda says my father is in his 60s and got in a fight at Walmart a couple of years ago. He ended up taking down a man way bigger than half his age. Oh my God, that's a good story. That's a totally good story. So about 2 years ago, I was at this sports bar in Austin, and I told you, I think I've told the story before, and I got into this verbal altercation. Although the other guy was escalating, it was around the most stupid shit. So this guy was bald, and he was an ex-New York cop named Vinny, and he had a school teacher wife who was cute, like above Vinny's pay grade, to be honest with you. So he's a retired New York cop. I don't know why he left the force or why he left New York, but he's living in Dripping Springs, this guy. And we're talking about some just stupid shit, like why football players um, should and make more than baseball players. And I made a case that baseball players ultimately wind up making more than football players due to the longevity of their career, due to the fact that they ultimately have a better collective bargaining agreement once they get past their first contract. I was making, and he just took it to another level. And then I brought up the whole thing with Michael Bennett in Las Vegas because he told me he was an ex-cop. And if you watch the video of Michael Bennett, the guy now is playing for the uh, Dallas Cowboys, and he's one of the um, uh, woke infantry. Anyway, he did this stupid stunt when he was in Las Vegas, and there was a guy running around the casino with a gun, and Michael Bennett was there. Michael Bennett hid, just like everybody else, behind a slot machine or a table or whatever. And then he gets up and he runs. Like, why the fuck is he running? He runs out into the street, and then the cops, they think, well, this is a guy, we got to go get him. They don't know he's Michael Bennett. They don't know he plays for the Seattle Seahawks. They run him down, they tackle him, and he starts crying like a little, like a little biatch. Right? And then he goes out and he wants to he goes, oh, I'm going to file a suit against the LVPD. And he's just, going way over the top. He never filed a suit, by the way. He's just talking shit. And when the video came out, it was like, dude, you caused it. You ran away. And then they're going to do what they're going to do because they're cops. And now you're going to turn this thing into kind of a Jesse Smollett kind of event. Anyway, that's Michael Bennett. And I was talking about, hey, well, he was talking about being an ex-cop. I said, hey, look, even a couple of ex-cops were able to track down and tackle Michael Bennett. And he took that as an insult, right? And I was like, no, they're football. It was like they took down a football player. And he took that as an insult, this guy. And now he wants to fight me. I swear to God, he wants to fight me. He's at the bar. And I'm looking at him. He's like, fist all balled up. It's like this. I'm eating my breakfast. I'm at the bar having a Bloody Mary, watching the games when I was drinking. And I'm eating my breakfast. I said, you don't want to do that. So you just don't want to do that. You do not want to get violent here. You do not want to hit me. You don't want to do that. Just lighten up. We're sitting here, we're watching some football. This is not worth getting all twisted up over. And eventually he calmed down. And this guy, man, I thought I have high blood pressure. Holy shit. That's probably why he's not a cop anymore. Anyway, that was the last kind of like intersection between me and another human in violence. But it was a trip. It was totally a trip. Because you got to size these people up sometimes and say, well, what's really going on here? Let's see. There is some other stuff I wanted to talk about. Oh, yeah. So you want to know who funds ISIS? One of the main funders of ISIS? I found this. You might find this to be interesting. It is Bilal Erdogan, who is Tayyip Erdogan's son. So this is a guy who is one of the funders of ISIS, because ISIS was a creation of Turkey, Saudi Arabia, the United States, Israel, and MI6. That's who created ISIS. This guy is one of the funders of ISIS. Right here. Russia's Sergei Lavrov is not one foreign minister known to mince his words. Just earlier today, 24 hours after this is from 2015 now, just keep this in context. After a Russian plane was brought down by the country whose president 3 years ago said a short-term border violation can never be a pretext for an attack. Remember, now this is when Turkey took down a Russian plane. Had this to say, we have serious doubts this was an unintended incident. This is a planned provocation by Turkey. So the article goes into who Bilal Erdogan is, right? And while we patiently dig to find who the on and offshore commodity trading middlemen are who cart away ISIS oil to European and other international markets, because that's what ISIS was doing, is they were oil pirates. In exchange for hundreds of millions of dollars, one name keeps popping up as the primary culprit of regional demand for the Islamic State terrorist oil, that of Turkish President Recep Erdogan's son, Bilal Erdogan. So this is the guy who was planting his ships in Syria. It's probably right around Tartus, which is a very interesting area and one of the last enclaves of the Knights Templar in that part of the world before they went back to Europe and went to the south of France. Um, so yeah, so Turkey's been involved with ISIS all the time. All this, ever since ISIS decamped in northern Syria, they've been in bed with them, and that area is where the oil is being extracted, and that gets into some more Trump kind of weird inconsistencies. The one thing about Trump is that he is painfully transparent at times. He's one of the most transparent presidents you've ever seen. Totally transparent. And what I mean by that is he'll tell you things. If you listen, he'll tell you things. It's kind of a hidden plain sight deal. So yesterday he was giving a speech, or 2 days ago, he's talking about Syria. He says, yeah, we have troops there. Yeah, we have oil there. It could probably be a pretty good deal for us because we could take that oil, we can make money off of it, we can disperse it, and a lot of people can benefit from that. Right? Like this has been going on for a very long time. This is what happened with the CIA and the Seven Sisters when they went into the Middle East and they started to essentially turn these Bedouin princes into these multi-billion sultans, oil sultans. Even their wealth has some strings attached to it, but that's maybe for another show. Anyway, so yeah, right. So he talks about this oil, and he says, "Well, it's ours now, and we're going to use it." I mean, but the way he talked about it was almost like he was a gangster. But again, it is painfully transparent because governments are gangs now. They're gangs. They're gangs like G20 and G8. Those are gangs. They're gangs within gangs. You have syndicates. You have the Clinton syndicate. You've got the Bush syndicate. And the Trump family has their own syndicate. You've got the Chabad Lubavitch syndicate. You've got all these different syndicates. And you've got the Jesuit syndicate. They're all based on crime, right? It's all crime. They're crime networks, unfortunately. And they work together and they work against each other. And every now and then, even what's his name? I always space out on his name. I can see it in my head now. Now I got to do this. I've got to tap into the other mind. Give me 1 second. I always space out his name. It's one of those weird names, Pablo Escobar. Pablo Escobar was the head of a crime syndicate, but he would do good things. I mean, it's a weird thing. It's like one of those, well, we're going to do all this evil shit, but we're going to do good stuff too. Like in a weird way, Pablo Escobar was kind of beloved in Colombia because he was, playing Robin Hood and doing things for the underprivileged and the underclass that the government wasn't doing. All his cocaine money. In fact, Escobar I think he was like running for public office or something. And he was going to try to supplant the president of Colombia. It's weirdly honest, right? But that's kind of how it works in a lot of ways. So what we're dealing with crime syndicates. It's just the way it is. And sometimes their good works are included. This is what makes Trump kind of difficult at times for people to wrap their heads around, because a lot of the stuff that I said on Sunday night is true. And what I'm saying today, I believe to be true. And I believe what I said Sunday night, I believe to be true as well, which presents a complicated kind of personality and difficult to wrap your head and arms around at times. Because essentially said, well, if Syria decides to go back in and retake the oil, we're going to kill them. I'm like, really? We'll just kill them. I mean, he says shit like this, right? I think he says it to get a ride out of people, but it's also, you just go, ooh, really? Why are you saying that? That sounds just like a crime lord. And you're giving people on the other side just more ammo to hate you, right? But that's Trump, and that's kind of how he operates. But I have to talk about this, right? I can't just not it's like, oh, everything's peaches. But I've learned how to reconcile it to the best of my ability, because you're going to get both sides with him, right? You're going to get this side, which is interesting and good, and turning out the fake, basically turning the spigot off the fake news, and really, kind of taking a dynamite to the mainstream media, which is good, right? It's good. We like that. He's done some other stuff that's really good, and we like that. And then you get the other side where he's like, yeah, okay, well, we're going to take this oil because it's the Wild West, and this is where things are in the world, and it's painfully honest. But you're also seeing like something, really. You have to go down that path. Okay, so now what will happen next? We'll see something good again, and so it goes back and forth and back and forth. Right, the meter of morality. I wanted to bring up this other thing, which I found to be very interesting. Let me see what I have here. What's this? Oh, yeah. Let me bring this up. This happened a couple days ago, and this really just screams about the inconsistencies around the mainstream media when it comes to events that are connected to gun violence. Like, they want to promote the types of gun violence that are politically expedient, and not the types of gun violence which really raises more questions and points a spotlight onto different communities who have a problem with violence and guns inside of their community. Like, that's so, like, it's glossed over. But anytime you have kind of a sniveling white nationalist patsy, which seems to be sort of the new tool, the new scapegoat, well, the media is all over it. But when something like this happens, they won't even come near this thing, although they do talk about it here in Texas. So this is from The Seeker, the Truth Seeker. It's a pretty good site, actually. Why did this shooting receive so little media attention? How can we blame the NRA and whites mass shooting at a black twerk or tweet Halloween party on campus of Texas A&M Commerce, followed by a retaliatory gun attack at a vigil? You're not hearing about this. Like, shit went down and people were dead. 2 dead, 12 injured. This is at a college party. Where's David Hogg? Where's the Parkland Six? They're not here. Where's AOC, or where's the Castro brothers who live here in Texas? They're not commenting on this because this doesn't fit their narrative. This is the narrative of the community that they're supposed to represent. And these are the people that they theoretically want to get their votes from. So to be critical of that community might actually jeopardize their longstanding relationship that's based on favoritism and based on things like welfare and all the goodies that certain communities or certain groups get. Well, part of the deal is that they're not scolded for what happens inside of their community. It's disingenuous. So this came out of the UNS Review, which is an interesting website. A gunman opened fire at an off-campus college party in Texas, leaving 2 people dead and 12 others injured before he escaped in the ensuing chaos, authorities said Sunday. Authorities believe the shooter may have been targeting just one person at a party of about 750 people outside Greenville, 15 miles southwest of a satellite campus of Texas A&M University System, and that others may have been shot at random. Hunt County Sheriff Randy Meeks. You always want to have a sheriff with the last name Meeks. Said authorities were still looking for the suspect. Meeks said it had not yet identified him. Guarantee you probably at least half a dozen people at that party knew who the shooter is. The shooting took place around midnight Saturday at what Meeks described as a Halloween and homecoming party for Texas A&M University Commerce. Though officials have said it was not a school-sanctioned event, authorities believe there was one male shooter who entered the venue through the back door and began firing with a handgun. Meeks described complete chaos after the shots rang out, with hundreds of people fleeing, including the gunman. Authorities initially had said that 14 people were injured, but they later revised that figure. The 12 injured Interesting. Number 12 included 6 people who were trampled or hurt by the glass in the melee, so not even as a result of the gun. According to Sergeant Jeff Haynes, a spokesman for the Sheriff's Department, 6 others were injured by gunfire. 4 of them were in critical condition, and 1 was in good condition Sunday afternoon. He said he did not know the condition of the 6th person. The 2 people killed were both males. Meek said family members identified the victims to local media as Kevin Berry Jr., 23 of Dallas. After a vigil for Berry on Sunday night at Dallas Park, at least 1 person opened fire. Great. Mourners and reporters on hand for the event to cover, and at least 1 vehicle was struck by bullets, according to local media. Multiple gunshots. This sounds like gang shit. This sounds like Bloods and Crips. This is gang related. This is just so gang related. Gunfire erupted on a vigil on Sunday night for a person shot dead. Blah 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 blah. Video showed multiple bullet holes in the vehicle's window. In frame, the reporter Diana Azoga said that neither she nor her photographer were struck. There didn't appear to be any injuries. Azoga added that the shooting happened while the vigil was ending. The vigil was at a park in Pleasant Grove, a neighborhood in Dallas, for a victim identified as Kevin Berry. So what the writer here, let's see, Paul Kersey. You know Paul Kersey? Paul Kersey is the name of Charles Bronson in Death Wish. That's his name, Paul Kersey. Interesting name for a byline, right? The vigilante. Interesting. Anyway, so Paul Kersey is supposedly the editor of that piece. Maybe he is Paul Kersey. Isn't that synchronistic? Ironic? Anyway, it's not getting attention. They don't want to talk about it. Anytime this happens, they don't want to talk about it. It's like the shooting that occurred near Aurora with the high school kids. Well, one was a tranny. One was a male to female, and the other was probably his high school lover, and they went after people. And all of a sudden, that happens. You don't hear about it. David Hogg and the Parkland 6. Usually, when this stuff happens, they were just there. They were just miraculously there somehow. In this case, that's not the case. And you only hear about this in the media because they don't want to cross the people that they have a relationship with their entitlements to. They don't want to scold them. They don't want to scold them. And they also want to keep this idea that there are groups that are good and there are groups that are bad. And they've already defined who those are at this point in time. And I'm not saying that this is a bad group. You have bad apples in every group. It's the way it is. A lot of it is determined by socioeconomic issues and pressures and a lot of other things. In this case, it feels like it was gang related, but they're not going to report on that. And that's one of the great inconsistencies that we have with the system. Right? Right. Okay, I got one more thing for you before we sign off today. And this is really interesting. I stumbled upon this. And I didn't even know this happens. Like, I did not know that this thing happens. And what this thing is that, and this is how I found out. It's where I found this piece of video, which you're going to appreciate on some level. But it's also going to get you kind of like, really? What the hell's going on here? So Katie Hill, who has resigned, is from her district was Santa Clarita, where they're having a bunch of fires, and also where they have the Santa Clarita dive. By the way, the fires are still going on in California. And apparently there's some fires in and around the Getty. And we know what the Getty has been associated with, child trafficking. So there's a lot happening. LeBron James had to go run and find a new home yesterday because his place was potentially going to get torched. I'm sure LeBron can blame it on somebody. I'm sure somebody who's racist started that fire. Fires are racist, if you haven't figured that out. So again, there's a lot happening in California, and it's not good. It is not good. They just keep burning away and burning away. And if you look at the fire pattern, starting up north and dealing with, Paradise, and then some of the fires around Lake County, Sonoma, they just keep getting closer and closer to the Bay Area. Keep getting closer and closer to the Bay Area. Now, the Vallejo, right below the Vallejo Bridge, was just completely on fire. My parents used to live there. There's a tennis club in Orinda, of all places, that burned down. So the fires are encroaching closer and closer to the Bay Area. and essentially getting people shoved into kind of more of this Agenda 21, um, you know, green prison. This is what's happening. And my mother, who lives in Walnut Creek, is telling me about this. And she lives in a senior community, and half the senior community did not have power. It's like, you're kidding me. These are people in medical devices. They need their refrigeration. They need to stay in touch with people. Most, there's people don't have analog phones anymore. They don't have those landlines. They're tied into, Comcast, or they're tied into their cell phone. If you can't charge your cell phone, you're not going to talk to anybody. If you can't get on and use VoIP because the power is down. This is in a senior community. They're turning the power off. It's insane. Anyway, everybody that's out in California, you be careful out there. And, and I know that there's this idea that they're trying to get people to leave the state. And it's like, yeah, maybe it's a good thing. I did. I left in 2012. Haven't looked back. I go back, and there are things about California I like, and there are things about California I do not miss at all. Don't miss at all. Okay, so I'm going to show you this. This is a piece of video. This is in the district that Katie Hill got elected. This is somebody with scant experience. You have to ask yourself, how do these people get elected? I'll show you how. Here we go. This is going to blow your mind. Watch this. This is, let me just frame this for you. This is a service that's provided in California where people can pick up your ballots. And this is in her district. Here we go.
Looking for Brandy? Who is it? Oh, it's Lulu. I came here to pick up your ballot. No, what do you mean? Yeah, we're offering this new service, but only to, people who are supporting the Democratic Party. It's a service. I'm just here to pick up your ballot and show you how to do it if you don't know. I came here to pick up my ballot. Yeah, it's new. Bill just passed last year at the end. So there's been a problem with people half the ballots that were mailed out last year didn't get back. A lot of people weren't signing the envelope in the back and stuff, but okay. Yeah, well, I can show you the bill that was passed and stuff. It's not like I'm gonna take it and fabricate it. But it has to be sealed and it has to be signed for me to even touch it. How will I even know that okay. Okay. That's okay.
All right, so I'm going to replay this for you. Here we go.
Who is it? Hey, I'm looking for Brandy. Who is it? Oh, it's Lulu. I came here to pick up your ballot. No, what do you mean? Yeah, we're offering this new service, but only to people who are supporting the Democratic Party.
Only to people who are supporting the Democratic Party. Okay, so what are they doing with these ballots? Are they delivering them? Are they changing them? Are they dumping them? Would you feel safe with somebody from a special interest group taking your ballot? Even if you're a Democrat, right? Even if you're a Democrat, but it's also pandering to the service. And this is where the right, the so-called right, loses. Because they don't have people like this. I think she said she was from LULAC, by the way, which is the group that is anti-fluoride. So kind of interesting, I believe. Anyway, this is what happens. And this is what happened in Katie Hill's district. People, she's a Democrat, and people were able to go up to doors and take their ballots. Apparently, this is legal in California now. You don't even have to go to a polling booth. You probably don't even have to show an ID. You got a ballot. It could be anybody. So go back and look at what happened in 2016 with the 2016 election in California, or even the midterms. You've got people like that walking around basically saying, hey, I'm here to take your ballot. And we wonder about the not just the efficacy, but the sanctity and the security of the system. Like, it's broken. When shit like that happens, it's broken. And people say, voting doesn't count or voting doesn't matter. Well, I'll tell you right now, it matters enough for them to pay these people to go out and pick up your ballot, whether it's to cast the vote or whether it's to change the vote. So on some level, it does matter. And I think it does matter in terms of locality and the local issues. But I just wanted to show you sort of kind of what's in the air. And that is not a national referendum, or that is not a national policy. That is strictly for the state of California, which has a lot of people. And this is how people like Katie Hill get elected, and probably how she got elected due to that kind of canvassing and support, so-called support for her campaign. What do you guys think of that? Love to know what you think of that. I'll chime in with you, see where your heads are with that. The ballot economy. Can't answer the door, having naked bong party. That is so funny, man. That is so funny. I love the professionalism. No badge or ID, right? Is this picking up my ballot BS, a scam or what? Totally. My awakening came through the political process, the election process. It is the dirtiest game going. The corruption is in your face, and still people believe in it. I love that she won't open the door to talk to her. I know, right? Totally. They've been caught changing votes. Yep. Christine says, I wish I could leave Cali. Stuck, totally trapped. You can't hear me? Oh, dear. Oh, I don't know what happened. Hopefully you can hear me now. Got to crack some eggs and make it sustainable, whatever. Arnold Schwarzenegger forced to abandon his home. Wow. Uber will bring you food and grab your ballot in the future. No doubt. Absolutely. The numbers matter for PR purposes, but the outcome is always blockchain voting will solve the problem. Paula is onto something there. Paul is onto something. Blockchain would solve the problem. Because once it's in. You can't, you theoretically, you can't change it, right? It's locked in. Yeah. So blockchain would actually be a good solution for something like that. So, okay, I'm going to get out of here. I'm supposed to tell you a story. I'm supposed to tell you a story. My media consultant said I should tell you a story, but I'm not sure. I don't know if I have a story to tell right now. I told a story about my dad and fighting. Do you have any other stories to share? Yeah, I guess I do. I'll share one story before I leave. Marion is my media consultant. She said, Robert, I was in radio. So people they like the stories. Tell them a story. Tell them a story at the beginning, story at the end. They like the stories. So I'm going to tell you a story. And it's not necessarily a lighthearted story, but it's a story. It's anecdotal. It happened to me yesterday. I was working out, and I got a call. And I stopped my workout to talk to this person because I hadn't talked to him in a while. And it was a really interesting conversation because this is a person who's in their 70s. They're an author. They've published at least a dozen books, and not just any like thick books, volumes. Somebody who's a bit of a seeker, slightly nomadic, but now trapped in a lot of ways in a country that he doesn't know or recognize anymore. And right now he's in Berkeley, living in Berkeley, staying in Berkeley. And it's not the Berkeley that he knew back in the 70s. It's a very, very different kind of place. And he's now engaged in long-term relationship with his wife, is drifting like an iceberg, right, out to sea, further and further away from what his interests are and where he finds some kind of solace. And this woman has been his anchor and his true north. And so when that happens, he's losing his ability to have this person that he does things in the world with. And he's finding very little in common with her as she retreats into kind of this, hardcore utopianistic liberal mindset. And this guy I wouldn't call him a radical conservative, nor would I call him a liberal. He's somebody who's trying to find truth and willing to go to great depths in order to find that. And what I heard and what I heard yesterday was somebody who was really lonely and really alienated. And I'm telling you, it happens across the board. And this is, I think, one of the things that we're dealing with in our time right now is loneliness and alienation, as people cannot find the same kind of cultural moorings that they used to have for the values that they believed in at one point, or are evolving and moving in a different direction. And one of the hardest things for people now is to resolve a lot of stuff, to find that center point amidst all the chaos, the center of the storm. And they get ripped apart and buffeted by the social forces, some of which they believe to be good or bad, or the social forces that they think that should be supporting their particular point of view in a way that tends to be more compassionate, empathetic, and more centered around truth, but are not, and are steeped in a kind of dogma. So it's very confusing for some of these people. It's very confusing. And these are people that are seekers, and they came out of a tradition of, questioning and challenging and trying to get to the bottom of some kind of dilemma or Gordian knot. And this person's in their 70s, and they're finding that they're lost. And this is not somebody who is without money. They have plenty of money, and will have plenty of money until the day they pass away. So it's not as if they don't have the financial means in order to have a different kind of experience. Which goes to show you that money isn't everything. And it can be very helpful, but it's not everything. So anyway, I just wanted to share that and pass that along to some of you. And at the end of the conversation, I think he felt a little bit better. We agreed to have lunch at some point in the future, and which is, and I like the guy. I think he's a really interesting person, and he played a significant role at one point in my life for a couple of years. So I've got a fondness for him, even though we probably don't see eye to eye, and that's not a big deal to me. As long as, people are willing to kind of explore things and talk about things that are challenging and at times maybe even uncomfortable, and I'm good with that, as long as we can talk about it and agree upon the things that matter to us, which is our friendship or some of the commonalities or common themes that we share and we can be affirmative about. So just think about that in your own life, and think about the people in your life that are intellectual or philosophical or spiritual shut-ins, and that really all they need in many ways is somebody to talk to, and somebody to allow themselves to bounce ideas off of. And maybe you're one of those people yourself, which is why I think the chat room is so successful and powerful here with these daily streams, is that you guys get to share. This is where you get to come in from the cold for 45 or 50 minutes a day and not feel like you're so alone. So just remember that, and maybe you could take that out into your day. And look, there are people who are just going to be obnoxious, and they're going to throw their hands up at you and walk away. And those people, you can try you want, but you're not going to get to them, and they're certainly not going to hear you. And maybe they're members of your own family, so you got to figure out some way to stay connected. Know your limits in those situations. But there are other people who, and again, we'll throw ourselves into that bucket. to be able to connect on a philosophical or moral or intellectual or spiritual level in ways that are important, you can find those bridges. You can find those connections, and when they're there, connect into them, because we're on the front lines of an everyday spiritual crisis in our dilemma in our lives. And this has been a big turning point for me, because sometimes, for me, the best defense has always been a good offense. And I have been so quick to like jump and, throw down. And I'm doing my best not to do that, even though every now and then I have a moment where, I get challenged a little bit, and I have to really watch, where I go with my thinking and how I approach a person or a situation. But we have, I believe, an opportunity and a responsibility to be both truthful and honest and authentic, and at the same time to also understand the gravity of what we share and how we share. And if a person leaves us in our sharing, either neutral or better for it, then that's great, because that person is then going to go back into their lives, and they're going to have the opportunity, the ability to relate and share with other people at that level. And this is how it works. But there are times when you can't control everything, and everybody's going to take your information the way it's meant to be heard. But if you come in at a high level as possible, then you know that you're clean in the exchange, and they can do whatever they want. So I guess what I'm attempting to share here is that if you are in a moment of connection with a person, or in a moment of disconnection, understand what that is. And sometimes really small gestures go a really long way. And it happened, and even in my life, if somebody has a real small gesture, like I keep talking about that park ranger who let us in, small gesture. But to me, it was like really, really big, because, this is the guy he's the gatekeeper of the system. And in that day, the gatekeeper of the system was kind to us and allowed us to experience the wonder and the mystery and the magic of Enchanted Rock. So just keep that in mind. All right, that's my story. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to say what's possible. Let me do a quick sign off in the chat. There's Luann. Hi, Luann. David, you are not alone. You are not alone, David. And I owe you a phone call, by the way. I owe you a Skype. All right, bye for now, folks. I think you'll see me tomorrow, hopefully, when I'm down at Patriot Radio, American Patriot Radio. National Cat Day. Today's National Cat Day. Well, we can't have National Cat Day, without the song. You thought you were going to get out of hearing the earworm. Not so fast. Here comes the earworm coming at you. I got a bunch of videos on my desktop. I just have to find the absolute right one. Where is he? Where is he? Here it is. I'm going to leave you with, it, Jasper the Astrological Cat. Didn't play it earlier, but you get to hear it now. Ain't that cool? There we go. Hey, have a great day. I'll see you guys tomorrow.
Jasper the Astrological Cat. Look up your chart, show you right where you're at. It's Jasper the Astrological Cat.